Well, hello everybody. We are about 3 minutes in. Let's give it a couple more for everybody to join. Thanks for being on our webinar today. This is part two of a discussion we had earlier in the year. And in the dynamic world of AI, this is a lifetime. So I'm very curious to cycle back with our experts today and get the pulse, the time, the fresh from the creatives, what's happening right now. Um, we give it a couple more minutes. Hector is calling remote in, as we heard from Ryan a couple seconds ago. So once we have everybody on the call, we can get started.
Fantastic. Can you guys hear any background noise on my end? Or
No,
just my
no, sounds good. Yeah.
Great.
So if there is some like plane flying in the back, which is mute yourself.
Yes. Or more likely a chainsaw, or or a 4x4 revving up.
Yep. Well, 2 more minutes.
I'm
Hector,
gonna
do you want? Sorry, Ryan, you want to text Hector where he is?
Yeah.
I think he just joined.
Checking.
Oh, he did. Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
sweet.
Hector,
Hey guys,
how's it going?
good. Hey, sorry, I ended up on the move, and I couldn't get back to my desk, but I am here.
That's good to know. Excellent.
Yeah,
Good to see you.
yeah. Can you see me?
We don't need
Yeah.
your desk. We need your brain.
That's right. Yeah, I figured my desk is not critical to this, but I'm here.
Yeah,
Well,
as long
Hector,
as
you're
you're
not
not.
alone. I'm here in northern Wisconsin. So
Like,
we're both remote.
Yeah, as long as you're not going through like a drive-through or anything like that, like those viral memes.
Yeah.
well, let's get started. 1 more minute. Just want to make some quick announcements, but basically this is part two of our webinar. As I said before, we started part one earlier in the year, transforming the creative process with AI. We are bringing together every month experts in their fields. And this month, I'm very excited to have Ryan Ramos and Hector Rodriguez join our own Sherry Ecombe on this wonderful panel discussion. Quick announcements, if you go to the next one. Basically, next month, we are bringing in a couple scientists that we actually collaborated earlier in the year of developing the right UX for laboratory science. It's a big instrumentation we created for Redshift Bio. We bring in the scientists actually that we did the work with to just learn about best practices in the field and how to create better UX using research. Let's get started. And I want to make announcements for our panelists. So we have Ryan Ramos calling in from Milwaukee, I assume, or some Milwaukee area. Ryan is an expert in the field, has his own agency. He also has done some really early AI work over the years and also combines AI with other methodologies to get the right results. And then we have Hector calling in from the West Coast. Thanks for being on the move and still making this call. I appreciate it. Hector actually is a classmate of Ryan, but ran a bicycle company or a very bespoke bicycle company for years, and started about 2 years ago with a consultancy, really focusing on AI. And if you guys are on LinkedIn, follow him. He has some great tutorials and also ongoing conversations about AI that are really interesting. I always enjoy the content. Keep it up. And then we have Sherry Ecombe, our director of strategy. She's based in Madison, but she's calling in from Rice Lake, northern Wisconsin today. And Sherry's been leading all our AI efforts on the strategic side with clients like Trek, and is very versed in all aspects of AI. I want to do a shout out for everybody since we've had a lot of people on the call already. What we typically do is we have about 40 minutes of discussions, and then we have 20 minutes of questions and answers. So please if you have answers also throughout the entire webinar, drop them in the chat, and Saloni will be able to serve them up to us so we can react to them. As we get started, my first question: what happens when AI is getting more traction? I would love to hear from Hector how your last 6 months have been in building your agency and kind of the tools you've used. Is it a big shift? Is it a gradual change? Well, how has it been since the last time we talked? Oh, you're muted? Oh. Does anybody know how to unmute him?
Let's see.
There you go.
There you
Okay.
go.
Yeah. I was muted from the host side, I think, but yeah.
Oh, it was nasty Sherry muted you.
It's okay. So yeah, the last it has been pretty insane, I would say. Like the last 6 months. I was talking to Ryan earlier, just catching up on things, and I mean, and I suppose if my organization is any sort of sign of what's happening with AI, it was in January. It was myself with a few interns and contractors here and there, and today it is 8 of us, like full-time effort.
Wow.
So it's four of us full-time, four contractors that are currently full-time as well, and so it and all of us dedicated to how do you implement, how do you filter out tools and workflows for different clients, and it started to split in between product development initiatives, product development / branding, and then I would say the other half in entertainment world, right? But same concepts, right, at the end of the day.
Right.
And so it has been and I think one of the reasons it's happening, it's because even my team currently right now, which is again all of us 100% full-time dedicated to trying to keep up with these tools and these things, it's impossible. We can't even keep up, right? So if we can't keep up, as a dedicated team on this only, then it's very difficult, I would imagine, for any organization out there to keep up that is doing day-to-day work, right, with their core offering. And so I think that's why a lot of these inquiries are coming in, because it is the pace is just it's pretty ridiculous, I would say.
Yeah, we've had many discussions with design leaders, that either run large organizations internally or even on the agency side. And it seems like, and that's why I'm excited about the second part of our conversation, the tools are rapidly evolving and changing. And it is crucial for you as a designer to have kind of manifested a workflow already, like be solid in how you approach your creative process. And then you can pick and choose, the right tools that fit that need. Hector, I mean, you said something on the last webinar, which was basically, everybody's workflow will be slightly different, right? If you can sketch really well, it's probably a different workflow than if you're, really more about kind of finding the right visuals to get started in the creative process. These are very distinct workflows. Saloni, who's actually on the call, and Maggie actually from Loft went to, they hosted an IDSA webinar, a deep dive last month, and we put together like a demo project, and it was really interesting because actually in the audience there were like really 3-4 different peoples that actually kind of really had very different workflows that all resulted in the same end result, but the way to get there even within AI was very different.
Yeah. I find it. Yeah. No, go ahead, Sherry.
Well, I was just going to say, talking about different workflows, and if you step back 30,000 feet, traditionally design has had a fairly standard kind of workflow, and sort of the skills, the designer skills that we've come to expect. And And I'll be really interested to see how that changes in the future. You know, like in the past, you know, one of the things that we could clutch our pearls about was that, you know, it was about sketching. It was about being able to get your you know, your idea down on paper and to be able to communicate it, you know, through gesture. And I'm, you know, is that as relevant anymore? You know, it might only be relevant to show your clients that where you are in the process, that it's not a finished design, it's still a work in progress versus something that's still, you know, that has gotten to the refinement phase, because it all kind of can look refined. So I don't have an answer, but I am interested to find out sort of what happens with our belief in, you know, those core skill sets.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I can quickly touch on because I think about that quite a bit, and so we just finished this like initiative for a client, and it was a very upfront phase, right? Like let's call it like an ideation phase. And I posted the like sort of some of the numbers behind it the other day, and it was interesting, right? Because as a lifelong sketcher and obviously longtime professional and somebody that always leaned on sketching as my tool of choice. Yep. There was some sketching, but I would say 5% maybe, maybe sketching in this upfront phase, right? And it was mostly AI generations and then into Photoshop type tools, and in this project, right, which was over the course of 1 week, we did, the client asked if we could just give them some of the numbers, and it was roughly 8,000 generations is how many we looked at. And then and I would say about half of those were in the, what I call like the putting dots in space phase, right? Like just get like the equivalent of sketching, right? Like what we would do with sketching back in the day. In sort of a more conceptual project. So it was just getting a ton of ideas out. You have to then have some sort of in-session curating process because there's just so many visuals. And this was a team of 6 of us doing this. And then I would say about half was in that sort of first just get things out, put things on the wall, right? That type of approach on the virtual one in this case. And then the second half, the rest of those 4,000, I would say, generations were in refining, right? And iterating concepts, within, in this case, Midjourney and Kriya were the main tools. And so to me, and then the results were, 3 different or 9 different families of products, 3 product formats per family, and across 3 visual design languages, and again, all done, pretty quickly, I would say, for that, how that would normally work, right? And it was, but I step back and I look at projects like this, right, and I evaluate them against like the way I normally would work prior, and it's still the same idea. I'm still getting a ton of drawings on the wall, right? The drawings on the wall, they just look different now, and so when I look at these images, right, I'm not looking at the whole image, right? I'm only picking up on one little detail that I like on that one, right? And I only pick up on that detail that I like there, and when I curate, I'm tagging them that way. And when I pull them in, and then I form the concepts, right? Like we like, in my case, me in my session and the team in their sessions, but collectively we connect the dots, right? But the dots it just happens to be that the dots now aren't always being sketched. I'm not saying that there is no room for sketching. If I had a very specific idea, then I would just sketch it, right? But if I'm looking for just sort of out there thinking, then these tools tend to help quite a bit.
Just to jump on what you said about like the foundational aspects, right? Like that foundational aspects of industrial design. We do graphic design. We do a whole bunch of different. So we're leveraging every type of AI generator, whether it's ChatGPT, everything, because we're doing marketing, copy, a whole range of different work. But at the end of the day, it's that curation, right? It's like, what is it you're training? How do you understand proportion? How do you understand that? And then applying it to Korea or Mid-Journey, and then finding that nuance and understanding that nuance. Because anyone can make an image now, right? Anyone, whether you're a marketer or anyone, you can create an image, but then it becomes, okay, what are the right choices that we make to curate the design going forward so that it can be manufacturable, so that it can draw the market or touch base on a brand. I think those are all things that we really need to, really push out and lead into, is our own unique viewpoint on that.
Right. I think
Yeah.
as a designer and an educator, what I like to stress also is to students say, it used to be that everybody had to sketch. And I think it's still important for you to have some sort of level of sketching to get your idea quickly on paper.
Yeah.
But now you actually have the ability to, use prompt. If you're really good at writing, you can actually use prompts to kind of describe what you want to have, right? And at the same time, use that as an entry point into your creative process.
Yeah.
So there's more opportunity to kind of build on your creative spirit per se.
Yeah, and I'm also, I'd love to hear the point of view from, the other people on the panel around, right now we talk about these rapidly ever evolving AI applications and tools that we're using throughout the design process.
Yeah.
Do you see a future where there will be a go-to platform for that holistic process, much the way we think about, the Adobe products or Adobe Cloud or Microsoft Office and all of the tools that they provide for enterprises? Will there be, do you foresee a company with that like you subscribe to the platform and it comes with all the things that you need?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's foundational, like we're using Photoshop, the generative fills and things like that nonstop, right? Like to help expedite the work that we're doing. So for example, like just even background fills, like how many times have you're at a photo shoot, you take a photo, it's not wide enough, or it's not, like doing those things are going to be fundamental, and they're already implementing that in Photoshop or Illustrator, in that set. So I think, Adobe's always going to be there, right? Until like a new program. And I think, I'll let Hector talk to Korea because he's like, we're using that every day. But, Mid-Journey, even just conceptualizing, I think there's like the big ones. But, for me, I'm always looking for new, like what's the latest one that can help expedite our workflow.
I find it, there's yeah, I mean, I definitely talk to a lot of tool companies and based on what we do, and that's part of, like, a big part of what we do is R&D projects, and that is our job, is to test out tools and to figure out and try to sort of predict the future as much as you could. The future now is like a month out, and so, but I would say, here's what we have found. What we have found is that not all, but most of these AI tools are being developed not for professional grade use cases. Like they're being developed for the mass market, right? Like especially in the text to video world, right?
Yeah.
Like it's, most of those people are just trying to get people to use AI to make funny videos for TikTok and for, things like that, right? So that is the case. I would say in the text to image world as well, right? Like it's very heavily sort of mass market kind of creator community focused, and folks like us, I would say everybody on this call that has implemented these tools has like taken these tools that aren't really designed for us and like sort of made them fit with what we do, right? And so the tools that are made for us, like the Figmas and the Adobes and the SolidWorks and et cetera, they all seem to be holding on. They're not, they're obviously all working on these things, but they are, I think they're trying to because designing here's what's basically happening. Where AI is today, based on the training that it has and just where it's at today technically. It doesn't solve fully the professional grade requirements that we have, and then those are from control to legal implications to IT implications, consistency, quality, all of them across the board. It doesn't meet the very stringent requires that professional grade or the professionals need, right? And so therefore, they still are useful, right? But they don't go to that level. I think the Adobe's, all those types of companies, they know that they need it to get it to that level, right? Before I think they make it an offering. And when they do, it's one of the reasons like Microsoft really has worked its way into the LLM world pretty quickly at organizations, is because companies are already on the Microsoft systems, right? So then when they launch a product, it's very easy for it to go through and be adopted because IT already signed off on it. And so I think that will happen. I do think eventually the more established players will probably sort of regain their foothold more than likely. That's sort of my guess on things. But for the time being, there's so many like small players that are just coming up with pretty awesome programs and then I know one of the founders at that Mood AI company, and people like him, right? That's a designer developing a tool for designers, right? The Viscom guys, those are designers developing tools for designers. And that's that's really helpful for people like us because somebody's thinking about us, right? Like a Midjourney isn't thinking about product designers, right? Like we have just turned that tool into something. So
right.
Maybe there'll be consolidation. I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but I have no doubt that these big players will eventually make their way in.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Sisko, by the way, thanks for coming. Had a really good point about, is the tool gonna stifle your creativity? Like what's that balance between, we all know these tools where like they're so constricted that you can't get out of them what you want. And then you all have these tools that are so open-ended that you really have to, almost, hack them to, as you said, Midjourney is a good example. You have to really hack Midjourney to make it work. And I think the balance will be really in, what's that workflow, right? Viscom, Kriya have like kind of try to massage the workflow a little bit, but it's still a little janky, right? You still don't get all the time what you want out of them. I think I'm hoping that the tools of the future to share is going to be more like, I know what I want and I can get there with a couple of sliders and a couple of clicks versus now I'm spending a half an hour on things that go all over the place till I know what I want, right?
Yep. And I think, to also like for Mark's question, no technology is going to make a bad designer a good designer, right? And no technology is going to be able to transform people with deep expertise in one field into, fantastic designers. And I think that goes like with any profession, there's that human, that the premium that comes along with human understanding and empathy and, experiences. Will we go through a phase where everyone is a designer? Yes, sure. We did it with research and strategy. Google made everyone a seasoned user-centered researcher and a seasoned market analysis because people could, type questions into a prompt line. And, but, that happened for a bit. And then it, like everything else, it levels out. So will we see it happen? Sure. Will you have to push back in some organizations against it? Probably. But I'm not really fearful that it's going to get in the way of designers continuing to be great designers.
I think challenge that I see, sorry to jump in there, is really that, you know, more and more marketing teams are now on AI, and they create an image that they feel is representing what they want, and then they go to the designer and say, can you make this? You know, we're already done, but can you just make this happen? And then you have to explain to them that, you know, it's not possible because we can't tool it, or, you know, I think it's a little bit of a painful process. You're giving people the tools to create an end visual that is not sustainably, that cannot be created, right?
It's funny on the flip side, I feel like sometimes it can be a benefit too. You know, like how many times have you had a marketing brief or that wasn't like that didn't explain what the end, like what they were trying to go for, or you get like the whole, hey, we need wow. What is wow? You know, like at least this
Right.
gives us a starting point to be like, okay, this is what you're thinking. This is how we can shift and change and be more creative. The other thing that to me, like these tools are just that. They're tools, like they help. Like Midjourney has a style. When you look at it, when it renders it out, it has a way it feels, right? Initially. Sora has this feel to it, but then it's about how do you make it again your own, like that defines your brand, your outlook, and then and cultivating and leveraging those tools to create that new unique image. And to me, that's the most important part. And this is the conversation I had with my lawyer, just so I didn't say something stupid on this web call, is it's about modifying the image. We're never taking an image from Midjourney or from any of the other tools and just using it flat out. We're like even the image that I made for this website on our site, it's completely altered. So we're leveraging that and changing it so it's completely unique and it becomes original to what we're trying to do. And we try to stay away from that legal conundrum if we just use an image flat out. That's just something that we don't do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is actually Frank had a question on this, right? Like, you know, how do you make sure that you know, your data set is not leaked, and that's, you know, maybe a question for Hector, like how do companies now protect their data sets, their IP, you know, when they're using AI for design creation?
There's yeah, I mean that, you know, I'm no legal expert, right? But so, you know, so take it all with that in mind. But what I have seen is, you know, all these organizations, or not all of them, I should say that. Some of these companies, they'll say that, hey, when you upload your data, they're not going to utilize your data for training. They're not going to utilize you know, there's no way for people to access your data, right? Like, so every company has sort of different levels of that sort of protection. That being said, you know, like I can upload things to Google Drive and it's protected there, but if somebody hacks my Google Drive and like take like at that point it becomes more of a like a risk question. It's like what do I feel comfortable sort of risking, because that company, and it's a trust question, I guess I would say, like how much do you trust? I know certain companies, so it's a kind of a known thing with, like, let's say we host everything on Google Drive. If somebody is able to crack that, then they have all our data, right? All this protected data that we don't want anybody to see. There is, but that's kind of a known sort of. There's known ways to prevent that, right? In the world of AI, everything's so new that who knows, right? Like I don't really know what's, you know, enough to sort of make a call there. And I think organizations, from my experience, sort of feel that way as well. So there's varying levels of how people approach it, but I do know at the most sort of secure levels, and what I see to be pretty common is that people aren't they are not putting in like non-patented information in there. Like let's say they're working on, you know, a product, and that product has, you know, is still not out, right? They're not going to put in that CAD underlay as a reference for like generation into Midjourney, right? Like, so that, like, that kind of sort of protect, like, people aren't putting in those, so they're not putting that as an underlay in Korea and then like starting to iterate on that, right? So some of it's just more I would say but again, every organization is different, right? You could very easily put in, you know, a product that is already out in the market, right? Like you can put in, you know, you know, let's say the client is, you know, whatever, like Ford, and then Ford, you know, like the Mustang's already out. They can put the Mustang in there and draw over that, you know, it's already public, you know, domain, and so, or public information. And so I would say it's a very sort of muddy answer and a muddy question to begin with. That whole world is just very unclear. But I would say that a lot of it is just kind of common sense type of things, right? Some of it touches on what Ryan just said. Like, let's say I draw, let's say I do a sketch. Obviously, that, you know, I've just made it up. It's not, you know, it's not patented or it's not protected yet. I put that sketch up there. I'm going to take that sketch, and to Ryan's point, that sketch is just a jump off point, right? It's my IP I put in there. I am now modifying that thing with the help of AI. It's going to come out of AI, and I'm probably going to modify it quite a bit after that, right? So then comes a question of how much is how far did I take it from that output to begin with, right? And so yeah, it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, what I've seen really interesting is that, you know, I used to think of AI as a co-pilot, and I'm seeing it more now as a sparring partner, right? You basically you know, you use it really to refine your idea, but it's just constantly back and forth, constantly back and forth, constantly back and forth. And you know what you can also do a lot is like output from AI can be put in Photoshop, altered, manifested, spit back out, and you know, use, you know, so this continuous refinement is really a powerful tool. I think I encourage everybody to try that. Basically, you know, take an image, refine it with the help of AI, take it into Photoshop, change what you want to change, really rough, right? It doesn't have to be pretty. You can take the biggest brush you want, just brush over it, but then feed it back in AI. You'd be very surprised how the fidelity changes quickly, right? And how you can get
and another quick example, like let's say I like just had a, you know, something that's not yet protected, right? Like a design, but what if I only like took like a corner, you know, and I just took that little corner in there and iterated treatments on that corner, and like, you know, like what about that kind of, like, can you tell that that's, you know, like it starts getting, and what am I scared of, right? That's somehow going to be somehow part of this data set somewhere in Midjourney's database, and somebody's going to access, you know, it becomes, I mean, I know it's like scary because and if somebody finds then it's public perhaps, and then now it can be patented, right? Like but if it's just a corner of it, is that, you know, does that put you at risk?
To be honest, like we've heard from a lot of our clients on the corporate side that they spin their own models, right? They basically, you know, they have their own versions that they run with to just keep it kind of air gapped. And I mean, maybe Craig, that's answering your question, is like, you know, there is options of running an LLM on your own platform, right?
Yeah, I'd love it if Craig, if you wouldn't mind, you know, I read your question. Can you give a little bit of context around your problem? And
my problems. We all have problems. Yeah, I mean, I think that we've sort of skipped off the surface of it, and we're a little bit talking about issues that are going to be with us for the long term, which is, you know, how do you, you know, what is IP, what is protectable, what ain't, et cetera, et cetera. My company's coming at it from a very different perspective, right? So we are a finance company at our core, so we have to protect a lot of information. And so we kind of have general policies with respect to where our information resides. Yeah, we call it our IP and so on and so forth. When they found out that I was dinking around with Midjourney, and by the way, full disclosure, I am not a designer, okay? I work with designers, I love working with designers, but I use this to prompt a conversation with a designer. You're not gonna want me designing your pan, your handle will fall off. All right, so, but my point here is that the issue that I'm grappling with is there are so many tools out there that are utilizing the hive, like Midjourney, to decide which direction to go, to evolve their tool, and so on and so forth. It's a very dynamic, very exciting, very vibrant thing that many of us, and somebody touched on this in the education sphere earlier in the chat, aren't able may not be able to access going forward as compliance regimes twig and get used to working in this environment, right? So this is, as a client, I am here to be a better client to my designing people, right? And as a client, I cannot overstate how important this is going to be going forward. There is going to be a move to contain, and it's going to start at the governmental and at the governance level. And it is an issue. This is now not an issue looking backwards and trying to decide what the hell is a copyright worth anymore.
Right.
It's where are we going to house this stuff? How are we going to contain, these things? And we're talking narrowly about the images that I create, but more broadly about the penetration of AI into everything. I'll stop there because I know I just dropped a big one, but I need help navigating with my corporate lawyer that as Hector correctly said, the risk is low.
Yep.
That somebody's going to find one of my pans out there that I'm playing around with. The risk is low. And how do we balance that? I'll stop.
Yeah, I think what I like about AI is it becomes impetus for ideas. Like you said it, Gregor, it's like a sparring partner, or it's like another member in the studio that you're getting perspectives on there. Like sometimes, like what the Photoshop generative fill is like completely different than what I would ever put on that fill. And I probably wouldn't ever use it, but it gives me a new perspective of like, hey, that's an idea. Yeah, it might be a horrible idea, or it might be a great idea. It's this way of getting a level of a different perspective from a computer that's generating it from like the mass of kind of vague things, because we're not putting, a lot of us, like for me, I don't put any CAD. Like if I'm working on a new furniture line or whatnot, I'm not putting that CAD on, but I am using it to help generate inspiration for other things. Just like I like to say, it's hyper ideation, because you get those, like to Hector's point, 8,000 images. Like how are you ever going to do 8,000 images by yourself? But you can generate those, and then you can start to look and pick and choose and make it, its own thing. So to me, to your point, like creating creative briefs, having that communication with a client is always a good thing. And then you can spar with them and help get it to an actual manufacturable product.
Yeah, well, we've been exploring quite a bit now. It's actually a big focus of so we started down the path, or I started down this path, and eventually the focus of our work was very focused on the closed model world, right? Like the Mid Journeys of the world and chats and that realm, Korea, and now we've been exploring the open model, like the stable diffusion side of things, and so that adds a lot of because you run it, you download the foundational model, right? You install it on your computer, which can be completely isolated from is not the hive mind as far as I understand it. And then now you can run localized efforts, right? And you can train your own models, and you can do your own, like as to your point, Gregor, you can start training your own models based on your own data. And so I think there will be probably a pretty big, that world is much more complex, right? It's the reason that I started down the closed model world, because it was easier. You don't have to have a specific machine. You don't have to know how to get all this up and running, right? And so the AI is already hard enough to adopt. So if you throw in all these complex technical setup issues, it just becomes even more complex. And just even operating it, just to operate, there's like no really easy user interfaces. And so then therefore that is left to the people that are willing to put in that time. But over time, I think that will become, there will be organizations and programs and different interfaces that will come out that are already sort of happening that will make that side of things easier. And that side of things is where I think you can have more custom solutions, more I would say perhaps safe solutions, or a little bit more peace of mind, right?
Right.
Yeah,
That's on the visual world, right? On the visual side.
And Sherry, you asked about like what are the big players? Like OpenAI is a big one, right? They're incorporating in Microsoft. You have, um there's the Apple generative um programs that are coming out. So they're all, OpenAI and that closed circuit loop where that learns from what you've been developing is going to be the big next step to design and development.
Yeah. And let's not forget the importance of communication and storytelling, and being able to decide, help lead your company to where is the best place to start with the application of AI that is safe and low risk, but can show ROI, so that, because right now everything is just under this umbrella of AI, and it does feel scary because there's so much unknown, but there are places that you can start that are safer and more contained, that it also helps educate the entire organization moving forward. I mean, it's no different than any other roadmap or strategy.
I think that brings up to mind like a really something that we talk about here often, and I think about often, is that it is so much of this of at least the effort I've put into it, and I think that some of the folks that that we talk to and people that we've engaged with, is that there's companies that we are working with and have worked with that we're going through efforts, like all these different R&D efforts, and they can't even use the tools in-house yet. Like they're not permitted to use it, but they're still doing the R&D efforts.
They have to, right?
Yeah, and that's right. And the idea, and for me, this is the way I visualize it. The way I visualize it is that me understanding that there's these legal, IT, control. There's all these different issues. Yeah, like the what these tools could even do today. Like I try to set that to the side basically, and I'm aware that they're there, but I try to set it to the side because I visualize this like learning like a new language, right? I have yet to go. I may not, I may not be going to France yet, right? But I should probably start learning, French right now before I go there, right? So a lot of this for me is just sitting here and learning this new way to communicate with these tools, right? And what I have found thus far is that all of these efforts that I'm doing, even as new tools come out, like they all apply. Like it's not this like wasted effort that, oh man, I put all this effort into Midjourney and now Midjourney's gone and like I just wasted my time, right? Like it's like, no, all that thinking, because all of it was how to communicate with a new way of doing, or how to like communicate with a new type of thing, like a being, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, and then how to think about these potential new workflows. All that still applies, and so for me, we should not ignore all of these things that are definitely going to be sort of in the way, but I do think it's very I do think it's very easy to fall into the situation where it's like, oh, it can't solve that, so it's out completely, right? And versus just you kind of have to suspend sort of that for a little bit. You don't have to, but I think it helps to do that, at least in this realm, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's many aspects to a job of a designer which are very mundane, right? Finding stock images, photoshopping them together, making them work. I think, that's forever gonna change, right? I mean, if you need a background to render nowadays, you just go to Midjourney, instead of spending countless hours on a stock image website finding the right angle for something, you just make yourself that angle, right? I think certain aspects of our job got a lot easier with AI, right? And I think if you are if anybody on the call hasn't worked with AI because they're afraid it's not gonna work in their corporate setting, please don't wait. Like there's definitely learnings, with, as any of the panelists said, to be made very early on, and there's very useful like small pieces of AI technology that can make your life a lot easier.
I would look. I would. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just as a practical example, what you said of the backgrounds, that's gigantic. Like, how many times are you looking for an HDR image, right? That you're trying to like get a new lighting sources or background like that, it already. Yeah, I totally agree. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say just a quick thought and add on. Like a good filter, I would say that I use often is it a low consequence task or high consequence? Like what are if it's low consequence, like AI is pretty helpful, right? Like you can almost kind of hey, if I just need to mock up a little example to get my idea across to my colleague, that's a pretty low consequence, like low stakes, like type of situation. Those are like kind of the easy AI, like fits in pretty well. And yeah, any high stakes, high consequence scenario, you have to tread pretty carefully, I would say. Right. And so
yeah, and we have about 20 minutes left, so I want to jump to my second part. It was funny, Hector, you posted the Volvo video, and actually all my agency friends posted the Volvo video at the same time.
Oh yeah.
And anybody on the call who hasn't seen it, look for Volvo for Life. It's a completely AI generated video clip of it's basically a car advertisement. I have many friends in the agency world that said, this would probably, if you would do this in a regular agency, would be $50 million to produce, would take about 8 months. The guy did it in 24 hours. But what's interesting is there's a huge opportunity to economize certain aspects of our jobs, right? But with that comes, I would say a high level of skill that individuals have to acquire to get that. If you try to make that video, you probably take a year, right? This guy is a expert photographer, expert, visual effects artist. So is our world not changing that much after all? Like, do we have to have talent and we just use the tools in a new way? Is that what I see? Maybe I start with Sherry.
Say it again.
Are we just, as you said, you can't teach a designer to be better with AI. Like, are we just changing the toolkits? Are we just changing the way we work? But the essential art of creation is the same.
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. I just think that we now have been able to increase our depth and breadth of exploration. But I also think, it's going to strengthen relationships with clients, at least the way I look at it through the lens of consulting, because I really believe that it is going to increase the way we collaborate with our clients. Even as simple as Miro and the AI tools that they built into that, or oftentimes brainstorming sessions, we would teach people how to sketch on half sheets of paper, right? Like, now you can democratize that and bring them in that way, so that they are part of the process, and that they are wholly bought into it, because they are also, part of the creative process. So I really think that yeah, I just think it's going to get, design is going to finally save the world, right? Because we can bring more people on board with it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Ryan, you wanted to say something.
I was just gonna say, AI, like you said, it's a tool, right? It's a tool to be leveraged, and then you make something new from it. Just like when you see something out when you're walking and you see like, let's say a piece of graffiti that inspires you to do something else. It helps you get perspective from somewhat an algorithm, right? That gives you access and range. And I feel like that is always a good thing. And those that won't embrace AI will kind of, it's a good time to really think about what you're doing. If you are doing those menial tasks and like the small, like things that can be algorithmed out, then it's like a good opportunity to maybe like look at how can you expand creatively and bigger and look at the bigger picture because you have that range now. So
And
I
I
think
also, oh, I was just gonna, you go ahead, Hector.
well, actually, no, go ahead. I'll jump in after because it's like a little bit. It's back to the Volvo thing. So
Got
yeah,
it.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I also think that there is an opportunity to strengthen relationships and collaboration because creatives can now expand their offerings beyond what is traditionally thought of as what you would get from a innovation and design consultancy. And also, perhaps finally, there's a chance to crack the code on ROI on creative and design, because that has always been so hard to measure. And I think that there is an opportunity to tap into, the way we use AI and the data coming out of it so that companies can actually report out and consultants can report out, no, really, this is the kind of ROI you can tap into by bringing on design or embracing design and design thinking within your process.
Yeah, interesting.
Hector.
Yeah, I was yeah. So the Volvo thing, it's tied to sort of this realm as well. So Greg Aper, a colleague of mine, also a guy to follow. He's like on the leading edge of like AI and the UX world, this type of thing. Should have him on too eventually. But he I work with him, every month, and he has this term, hand grenade, horseshoes and hand grenades, and that Volvo video is like exactly what's going on there. Like it is it's very impressive, right? So I posted it. I thought it was really impressive, and but it's a bit of a like a horseshoe type of thing going on there, right? Like it is I'm sorry, a hand grenade thing going on there, right? Like you kind of throw something a certain direction. It doesn't have to be super accurate, and it looks pretty impressive, right? And and so what that person did, which is what a lot of us, he worked around the tool, right? He found what the tool is really good at. He worked around it, and he used a lot of creativity to make it just really fit the bill, right? Like if and so the result is impressive, right? If the client came in and said, hey, I need you to do this exact thing different, now it's a completely different ball game, right? Now all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh, now and so now you're back, now you're in the horseshoe world, which becomes insanely more difficult with AI, right? And that is where, back to your original question, that is where the professional creatives come in, right? So the difference between that the horseshoe and the hand grenade is pretty significant, right? And more significant than I think a lot of I would say sort of just perhaps the general audience like thinks, right? In terms of non-professional videographers look at that and think, oh man, that's impressive, or non-professional product designers look at product world with AI and think, oh man, that's crazy. And but the difference, the difference is pretty significant. And so,
well, I talked to a friend of mine who works on big car advertisement, and he said basically, a company like Volvo could never ever make this ad work because there's so many stakeholders in that value chain that have to make decisions that, as you said, Hector, you can make something really look impressively awesome in short amounts of time, but then you can't go back and refine it because then the tools are falling apart, right?
Yeah, because marketing says like, hey, we need this to happen. And legal says, oh, no, you can't have that happen that way. And everybody has their opinion. And that right now, currently today, at least, is where AI starts faltering, right? And so it's amazing for use cases where you do just need to have a hand grenade approach, which there are plenty in professional world, right? It's just a matter of identifying the difference, right? And employing it, there.
It's funny.
I think in the agency world, there's a lot of pitches, right? People come to pitches, and I think the fidelity of a pitch can go up a million times with AI, right? Because you can literally bring your idea to the world, to the life in a day, and pitch it to your client. And it's not going to be like this in the end, but it at least gives you like this, this explosive starting point to kind of talk about.
It's interesting because, even talking about product design, right? You go from the pitch, which can be like really beautiful, and then when you have to make it real and that conversion. And I think that's the area where AI really is needs to progress, is that bridge, that gap of manufacturing. Because, I was just in North Carolina the other day. It was in a factory, and it goes back down to craft, right? Looking at the actual assembly, and like from what I had in the computer, and then we're going back to like a hand manufactured product. Like, what is that transition, and how do you make sure that what you have on concept actually becomes reality? That's going to be like the biggest next step, I think, for AI, that I think is the toughest leap, right? Is making something from that digital sphere to real product.
Right. I agree. Well, we have 7 minutes. I don't know if there's anybody. I think we've covered most of the questions, but if anybody has any questions, please drop them in the chat. I'd love to maybe also do a little bit of a roundtable on how you guys are seeing, is the innovation accelerating, or is it slowing down? Like, where do we feel? I mean, we see a new AI tool every day, right? Are they just like starting to materialize, or do we think that there's a certain level of like things are getting more, certain workflows are getting more established? Where do we take this from here?
Yeah, I think I think actually I find it like your question went one way and I had like another thought, but I think here actually I have this other thought that I find really fast. Not to
okay, go to the other thought.
Yeah, because it sparked from what you said, but like I've had this struggle, right? Like lately, and it's interesting because I don't know the answer, right? But I'm like wrestling with it, and I think it's people are gonna wrestle with it. So I found, and it happened with ChatGPT, right? Because I like to write, right? And I write all my posts and all the news, everything, right? Like I don't use ChatGPT to help me with that. Like I still do all the writing. But when I'm trying to, like you said, like a sparring partner, when I'm trying to figure out our offering or our services or things like that, I utilize ChatGPT to like does this make sense? Like what do you understand from this? I do a lot of that kind of stuff. I found myself the other day like writing a proposal, right? And I was writing a proposal, and I found myself like just like having this the blank page, and I started writing it. And at some point, I was like, I'm going to use ChatGPT to write this. I basically felt for the first time in a while, like, man, am I dependent? Am I getting weaker at writing? Like, am I now depending on ChatGPT to write for me? Right. And I had this little like moment of like, man, like,
no way.
And I'm
I say no, you're not, because I mean, that would be like, should I stop using, well, now I use ChatGPT like I do Google search, but do you know what I mean? It's like,
I just had a moment. I was like, I don't know, like maybe it is, maybe it's not. Maybe I'm like getting like, like maybe it's like weakening my, and I wasn't
like we don't
sure.
know how to use read maps anymore because we're just like, just tell me how to do it. I'll just get there.
So then the question becomes like, do I need to remember all the phones in my phone, all the phone numbers, right? Like I'm like, I can focus on the conversations instead of like having to, fill my brain with all these phone numbers, like. Is that what is that kind of what's happening? Like anyway, all that, just thinking out loud, that was my moment the other night.
I think that we mundane task, I think somebody said it, you want AI to clean your toilet and do laundry. You don't want AI to create your creative, draw your oil paintings, right? So you want to give them the mundane tasks that you really don't want to do. That's a better use for AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of copywriting, and a lot of it we're still doing by hand. Like we still feel like, ChatGPT, sometimes it's not like specific enough. Like if it's like large text, things like that, we leverage it. But if it needs to be unique or have a unique hook, we still are doing a lot internally, like using our you know, but we do leverage it as like another point of view. You know, again, it's a tool. It's another person in the room, you know.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
Wonderful.
the sparring thing, I think that to me, that was like, if I take one thing away, is like that was a good way to look at it. Like that because that is what's happening. That is how I utilize ChatGPT, especially like in that form, and the thinking's still all coming from, you know, but it just
Yeah.
from my end, but it allows me to view different viewpoints, and you know, that I think that is where the value is.
At the
Yeah.
end of the day, you're still making the choice, you know. You're still making
Yeah.
the edited choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, for anybody who's a student or educator on this call, or is, you know, in the early parts of their career, I would encourage everybody to start using AI, you know, and really understand, you know, where you can use it the best, and where it makes the biggest impact in your workflow. Nobody has, you know, put a prompt in and ran with the design that came out of that prompt, but it inspired you to probably do better designs through it, right? So it's a great way to basically generate a lot of ideas very quickly, and then, you know, build on that based on that.
But also don't cheat. Like if you're a student, like try to learn the fundamentals. There's something to be said about like still learning how to draw. You don't have to render per se, but how do you communicate that idea? And I think that's the for an educator, it's how do you communicate that idea so that your end product, whether it's an image or it's an actual product itself, gets to and hits the design target that you're going for. And having those fundamentals, understanding what proportion is, all of those things. Um, because at the end of the day, you're the editor. You need to understand where that's coming from. So
Right. Yeah, I think it's crucial, in a sense, for especially young designers to hone that skill, right? Because that's something that AI can teach you. You know, what's proportion, what's a good design versus a bad design? Why do you make a decision versus another decision? Those are hard things to learn, and I think, you know, that's not something you can just rely on a AI tool to give you.
Yes. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining.
I really enjoyed the hour with everyone and the questions. And of course, thanks Ryan and Hector and Gregor. It's always, let's do it again.
That's right.
Okay, 6 months from now, let's do a redux. I'd love to you know, cover some other areas of AI, but
And
thanks everybody for
juxtapose like
joining us
the
today.
things we were saying today versus what we're seeing 6 months from now, and just like measure like, huh, we
yeah.
thought
Yep.
that's where it was gonna go.
Started out with all our quotes that were
Yeah.
wrong. Like,
Yeah.
all
We're all
right, well,
full of- yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, and anybody will have a transcript of this on our channel soon. So yeah, if you guys want to reread or re-listen, enjoy yourself. Thank you so much, everybody, for calling in. Thanks, Hector,
Thank you,
out of
everyone.
LA traffic to be able to call us.
yeah.
And we'll be in touch. Take care.
Thank
See
you.
you guys.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.